So, um, like I said, coaches, thanks for coming. I'm gonna be real quick with my intro because again, no one's here to listen to me talk. Coach is like I said, is for those of you who came in after I did this little spiel before. Coach is going to speak for about 45 minutes or kind of how long ever. We'll leave some time for question and answers at the end. If you have any questions while he talks, just drop it in the chat. And we'll try to either get answered as we go or answered at the end for you. Um, Again, if you have to leave early, this will be posted on the YouTube. So you can kind of go back there sometime either Thursday or Friday. My goal is tomorrow, but if things happen, I can't guarantee that. Other than that, like I said, I thank Coach for his time. Please try to keep yourself muted out of respect. And then if you get kicked out and you need to jump back in, I'll try to get you readmitted as soon as possible. But Coach, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nick. Scott Girolmo, this is all the contact information you would probably need. I would love to see if anybody is running some of this stuff, love to collaborate. So please let me know. And if there's things that I could be doing that you have suggestions for me. A couple of you guys I've already clinicked with on this. We got guys from Pennsylvania and Texas and Georgia and all over the place. So I'm excited to get a chance to talk about it. So I'm glad to have an opportunity to show you some of the things. We're not going to spend a ton of time on philosophy because I want to show some of the schemes, but then I can come back to this philosophy side and kind of go over why we make some of the decisions that we make and what schemes that we're going to run out of this. And because you may be wondering, what the heck are you thinking? And to give you a rationale, I can come back to this. Okay. But, before you ask that question, let's just show you some of the things that we're doing to equate the numbers and to attack defenses with the strength of our offense, which is quite often, 2 to 3 good linemen, and then 2 guys that are not very good, and then 2 to 3 good skill players, and then 2 other guys or 3 other guys that are just really good hard workers and not necessarily great skill players. So in essence, what drove me to try to adapt some of these schemes to what we do is trying to hide what we thought was overmatched talent and trying to highlight our matchups that we actually had where we actually had good players and wins. So we're going to show everything we show tonight just about. There's a couple RPOs in here from this year that I've got that I threw in just they're out of a normal 5-man surface, but it was just to illustrate the term. Most of what we show tonight is going to be out of the unbalanced 5-man surface. So that's what we're going to be talking at length about. And we will talk about a single backfield sets as well, but most of what we talk about when it comes to formations, we'll have a 2-back backfield set. So we'll refer to the short side or the single side offensive lineman as the quick tackle. The center or snapper will be the guy snapping the ball, quarterback. Inside guard and strong guard will be the 2 inside most linemen to the long side of the formation, and then strong tackle is what we're going to be using to describe the tackle to that far side. So this is the backfield set that we're going to be dictating, or talking about tonight. All right. And then from a formation standpoint, just to throw it out there real quick, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on formations, but we can talk about that anytime. We use a modified flip card system with 4 possible digits that shift 4 factions of players. So the first faction is the offensive line, where we dictate which side that they're going to be offset on, or in some cases, if we're in a balanced 5-man surface, we decide which is going to be the quick side, which is going to be the strong side, or where do we want our best 2 pass protectors, things like that. We move the offensive line around to formate that quite a bit. All right. The second card is going to dictate the formation set itself, which sets the 7 players on the line of scrimmage. So And a lot of times you're going to see some X over and making us unbalanced on the line, and maybe even unbalanced with the split end and making a player ineligible. But most of the time it's dictating, okay, we got an X receiver here, we got a Y tight end in line over here. We got an X receiver here, we got a Z receiver there. So most of the time it's just dictating where we think our one really good receiver is and where the other guy is, or where our tight end goes, and then where the skinny kid who can't block anybody goes. All right, and then the last two cards really are malleable. So depends on the year, but I've in some cases I've used those to call more than one adjustable player. So in this formation set, or it's because we're going to talk about two back most of today, it's usually one guy that's an adjustable player that we can move all over the field. Or if we were going to talk about single back stuff, it would be two guys. Two guys get set at anywhere on the field with that third card box. The last card box is the backfield set. So it gives us the malleability to adjust to whatever backfield we feel like being in that week, that day. Okay. All right. Sorry. I wanted to make sure I went over that. But most of what we see is going to be in this world today. Two back. This is a pistol with the offset on the right and a long side and a quick side. Okay. And we're going to be doing the best we can to race through some of these things so that you can have time for your questions. Because I know everybody's kind of working in their own real world. And a lot of guys, their first question should be like, all right, what percentage of your offense is this? That's the first question I get is, they email, hey, like what you did, but how much of this do you actually run? So everybody's got their own questions. I want to get to them and just want to be able to show you some of my stuff. And it's all up for grabs. So I'll answer anything you want. All right. So that's formations from a surface and a box standpoint. Out wide, we're going to work with the twins open almost the entire time we talk tonight to give you a framework and a structure of where we're going, so you can get an idea. And depending on where you want to take this at the end, I can show you some other stuff that's maybe outside of this realm. Okay, but mostly going to be twins open and formations. All right, cool. And just drops a question in the chat box, and if I'm poking back and forth, I can get to it. So I'm actually going to skip the wide zone stuff for right now, and we're going to focus on the short power play, and I can come back and go through the other schemes I have in front for you. For some of you guys that want to see split zone, you want to see wide zone, or you want to see wide zone with split action, any of that stuff. But we're going to work in the short power world because of time. And short power is what I think is my favorite play out of the formation groupings. So we got alongside two back, no tight end. Love this play. This is the first thing I would install, and the one thing I think was easiest to teach out of our normal spread power, where we're a Malzahn family power counter inside outside zone buck mentality. This was so easy to get in to that run game that I think it's worth your while. So to give you a framework of what the play is, right? We're gonna be blocking a power gap scheme play with normal gap scheme rules, and everybody's got a little bit different communication for the front side combo. But I'll show you mine, and you decide if it sucks or not, and maybe make some suggestions. All right. But what we're gonna be living in this world for the next 30 minutes or so. And then we're going to talk about not only the scheme, but we're going to talk about how we protect the scheme with some additional pass game, how we protect the scheme with run game, backfield action adjustments. Okay. So this is kind of where I would start if I was going to do this tomorrow. This is where I would start. I'd start in this world right here. All right. And we'll break it down just a little bit before we come back to some more clips. So what I think it's smart for you to do is just to take a look at your best three teams on your schedule and decide what are they going to do structurally on defense to stop me in my normal schemes, and then how do I perceive they're going to adjust when we get into an unbalanced surface. and go after them in your game planning in the off season. There's a couple guys in here who I've asked, hey, how do I game plan in the off season for teams? That's something that's been successful the last 2 years since I asked them that question. This scheme to us is a numerical A to backside A gap play. So for us, our numeric system just tags the number of pullers, or a gap scheme if there's a number of pullers, and then the attack point or the coach of the play. So the guy that's at the attack point, who's going to make the call on what type of combo we're going to make to the ID backside, or in some cases play side if it's zone. He's the number. So he's the attack point. So in this case, it's going to be it's their quick tackle, two, or if you're long side to the other side, it'd be 3. All right, but I love this scheme against tight front and bare front teams. Bare front is one of the things that really made me want to try this, because I wanted to create a situation where we might get a chance to uncover our center. In our level, it's hard to get dang snap back there when the kid's face mask is in the back of his throat on every play. And if you're dealing with consistently maybe a center that is developing, all right, or he's a patchwork player, a guy that you love and works real hard, but he's not very good, then uncovering him is a huge advantage. And it's definitely something that I picked up from talking to Terry Hesbrook, who's the coach at Ithaca High School in Michigan. And he's somebody who helped me a lot when I first started thinking about installing these schemes. Uncovering that center in the shotgun. So attacking the bear is great. All right, this is something that helps us attack tight front, and I'll show you that cut up in a second here. The second piece is just being able to isolate our best offensive lineman in a position where he can make a one-on-one block and create some sort of movement. So the last 3 stops, I've had one good lineman that we knew we could run behind consistently. The other guys, it was hit and miss, whether we were going to take right steps, or we were going to have good pad level, whether that series they were going to be violent. So by isolating him in this position and making the defense honor him, you make a balanced defense play in an imbalanced structure, or they line up how they're going to line up and balance, and you're in an imbalanced structure attacking their balanced defense, which gives you a numbers advantage and some good angles to run with. The tight front, which and the 3 safety defense, which is really popular now, and just it's getting a lot of popularity against these 11 personnel Y offsets that people are running. All right. Screams that third safety down from the next level, makes it hard for us to get to him on most of our normal gap combos. In this situation, with the set that we're in, he really has to honor one side or the other. If they're going to rat with him, he's got to work with one of those 2 safeties and split the framework of the defense. And if he's just going to be an extra plug fitter, like a fold player, then typically he'll have to work to the long side just to remain gap sound. So just by doing that, by creating that imbalance there, all right, you give yourself a little bit of an angle, a little bit of leverage to get your extra man through and pull to him. All right, and that's what we're looking at here. So the front side, all right, for us is the exact same rules that we would normally use in our gap schemes, but the one thing that we will tweak is that because we have our best player there and he's the coach, he gets to dictate how the combo works, or whether he's alone, he has a lot of freedom to vary the way he blocks the front side of this. The day one teaching is that we try to work a zone step on our first step, and then if it's clear in the A gap, we work to the ID. If it's not clear, we let him just base block whoever is on him. And we tell him that because he's the best, we're going to try to work and secure our inside shoulder, or that A gap, that play side A gap, and make the guy play outside of us. Because where we want to punch the ball is an A to backside A anyway. All right. And typically we're in an offset backfield like this. So the other options that we have, and this is really just on a count system, numbering system. If we do have a +1 in the play side A gap, we recruit the center as our combo player. And we treat that like any other normal gap combo. We have two variants of it. We have a true gap combo where we step together with the near foot, and then we try to get the play side or the quick tackle here to work over the top to the ID while the center zone drives. He's the stick guy. And then we have the zone combo where we'll push the center off in a very basic zone combination block, where the tackle will zone drive and hold that A gap, and the center will post. He'll get to the near peck inside with two eyes on the ID. We pull actually with the outside or strong guard. So where this scheme really is cool for me is that it really gives me a kind of a place where I can put that really bad lineman who can't move, and we can anchor him at the inside guard. I make it sound so bad. I love those kids that have played for me, but it allows us to anchor this guy here and use him at what he's probably good at, which is just standing still or not going backwards. He's probably not good moving forward or sideways or anything. So he can kind of be safe in there, and pulling who is typically the most uncovered guy in this set, which is the strong guard. So our strong guard in this set is the guy that we really think, besides the quick tackle, can play. We think all of these players, we can get away if they're not really that good. All right. And when we watch some of these clips, what you'll see is some of those variations of blocking are going to come to light, and I'm going to illustrate them for you the best I can. All right. Just so you can see the entire scope of the film, I tried to pick, and some of you guys have seen some of these clips already, I tried to pick the film that we had the best quality. All right. It's kind of hard to find high quality, high level film because we're usually shooting from the top of a press box that's about 50 feet off the ground. So this is just happened to be at JMU, and we got some really great quality film on it. All right. But when we go to the end zone, we can start to identify some of those kind of blocking ideas that we were just mentioning, like the zone to the A and working to an ID. All right. Like using the center now as a potential play side combo block. Instead of him always blocking back over and over and over again, we use our inside guard there. And then, you can't understate how important it is to gap hinge the backside, but having the ability to put maybe a really good player or a strong side defensive end all that much farther away from the point of attack there. All right. So some of the things you probably are going to have questions about might just be, all right, what are the answers for if we have 3+ on the play side there? How are you going to attack that? And that's something we can talk about at the end, because we have a number of other long side schemes that we can run. We just don't have a ton of time tonight. So I want to make sure you get your money's worth. All right. The even front team, so that we just saw a stack team. The even front teams will typically designate new center, and then they'll adjust accordingly. And what we see from even front teams consistently is just a hard wrong arm spill by the B gap defender. In this case, it's the B gap defender to this side, and it'd be the D gap defender to the long side. So having answers for how you're going to block that and how you're going to attack it is critical, just as it would be in our normal 5-man surface. It's just a little closer to the quarterback now. So any option schemes that you run are more of a midline read than they used to be when he was in the C gap, when that defender was in the C gap. People may be afraid of that. Some of you guys may be afraid. Don't be afraid of that. Don't be fearless, because they can do it. And I was at first a little afraid of that, but you cannot be afraid to read these two guys, even though they're sitting there and they're right next to the center, or they're right, might be sitting right in the B gap. Don't have any fear about using option schemes in here. And that's some of the things we're going to talk about, because not everybody is going to be able to get great leverage and have such, good technique with their kickouts. sometimes guys struggle with that. It's a tough thing to do. And it's definitely violent collision. So you don't always need to kick that guy out. Sometimes we can just cruise him and read him. All right. Or same scheme, just adjustment and variation in the way that we block it on the perimeter and how we handle that B gap. So when we watch this, one of the clips that's really critical to show early is against these fronts that, you know, you're going to play teams that are pretty sound and do a good job of reading guards and playing over the top. When we ID somebody, we typically say to our quick tackle and the backside ID, look, stay on track. If he runs over the top, to heck with him. Just stay on track and really seal the backside, because somebody will kick him out. They will sever him from the interior of the play because he's scraping so hard. In my experience, when we run this scheme, I take our best player, and if we can identify that there is a definite mic that we have to account for that week, we will not go all the way back to the backside. I would rather make the backside guy scrape and make the tackle than let the leading tackler make the play in a situation like this, like we're watching here. This kid he's their bell cow, so we wanted to make sure we got him blocked. So what you'll see there is the zone step. He does scrape over the top, and we could have kept going with the quick tackle to steal backside and use that pulling guard to kick out, which is the base scheme. But we want to get that guy blocked. So in one of the things that we will continue to do that I think is a good idea is get your guards or your pullers to turn in when you know you're going to block, play side straight up. This guy 56 here on the skip pull, and we do skip pull. You don't have to, certainly, but I'm a big fan of skip pulls. He is turning in to try to pick up that backside scrape. All right. And I think that's helped us find extra hats a lot in the course of running a lot of these schemes, but it's definitely this one. All right. I'll go to the end zone here just so you can see how we're set up. Another even front. This even front did not necessarily overshift. So we don't have the classic G front adjustment where we would take our 2-eye and put him on the shoulder on this side of the center. Much of what we get is a defense that wants to maintain a 3-man presence on the short side. And in this case, there's going to be one extra hybrid safety coming down. So for the count system, when we start talking about using all the plays together and splitting the defense in half, for, you know, being able to quickly adjust and attack the numbers advantage is critical, just as it would be in any other offense. But now you literally can have a numbers advantage on the offensive line. You don't have to manipulate players that are off the line of scrimmage all the time. So just because of the hats that we've got, that's why it's critical to have some of those schemes, what we would talk about, the lead or wide zone to the long side to complement your short side power play. And the important part of this clip to talk about is that this combo, what we call our cage combo or our zone combo on the play side of the play. This is an absolutely terrific job. It's of these two guys working together with the intent to not only come and move the guy on the line of scrimmage, move the D tackle and plant him, but then also working together with eyes on the second level and adjusting. We don't teach them to come off until they get to be varsity players. So when we take over this new program here, we're not going to teach any of these JV guys to come off. We're just going to teach them to drive the down block. Now, it's probably it always causes a couple of tackles where we may have, you know, maybe the kids had been able to come off, but I would rather to teach the drive and the post early and get them so that they can communicate. So at least they know that they've got to move that guy first before they can come off. And I've heard this from a couple of other really good coaches that sort of taught me, not actually climb. So we try not to tell them to climb. Instead, we try to drive the down until the second level defender is a gap threat and he's basically in my face, so that we have less chance of missing. And in the grand scheme of things, I think unless you have a pretty good fullback or tight end that's willing to stick his nose in and make tough blocks, you're going to have to come up with more than one way to handle that play side B gap, because once you get good at it, there's so many teams that are going to put their stud right to that quick side because they know that's where you want to run the ball first. You got to have an answer. And sometimes, in my experience, I've only had a couple good ones. The other guys that I've had at this position, at that fullback position, have been, they're doing their best, but they're not able to hang in there and be as tough and as violent as they need to be at the strike point. All right. I got a question. Do you work the pulling offensive guard to go around the spill by the DN? It's a great question. We do not try to actively tell him to read the spill like we would on a counter scheme, like a GY or GF counter scheme. But instead, when I know we're going to get that, because I want the guard's eyes inside so often, when I know we're going to get that, I try to call play variants that control that C-gap defender and get the ball on the perimeter one gap wider, because we're going to get a big play. We're going to get a really significant play if he spills, because he's so tight already that when they step down, they spill, they're next to the snapper, and we're 2 steps from the perimeter already to the quick side. So we don't actually practice a bounce, or we don't. Now, some of the guys they kind of have it ingrained in them, because we do practice the bounce when we run counter. If we're running GT counter or counter tray, as a lot of guys call it, or we're running the guard and the tight end on a power switch and counter, the GY counter, we do practice that. So it ends up being a skill they have, but we don't actively want them to do that, just because I want their eyes to be inside to get vertical, because we're going to hit the ball in the A or the backside A gap. All right, cool. I had a question just a minute ago and I missed it. Where does your dude on the O-line play? And that's a great question. The answer is the single side or the quick tackle. That's where I like to put the dude. But again, when we formate, one of the things I think is really cool that you could think about would be formatting your offensive line to be able to move him just like you would any other of your better players. Bye, sweetheart. Be able to move your best lineman so that you could put him on the long side if you wanted, and then run behind him. Because so oftentimes teams do not identify where the best linemen are anyway. And for me, being able to isolate our best player on their best player to create the matchup that we need at the point of attack is absolutely mission critical. And makes all the difference in the world. So a couple of different fronts there, just to give you an idea. We've already looked at the bear, all right, and we already took a look at a tight front or a 3-3 stack. We saw 2 clips of those. The 2 even fronts that we just watched, we had one that was basically a 0 or a -1, and then we had one that was a +1. We prefer to run against the +1, or what we talk about, the overshift, this one here, just because of the angles and the numbers, right? But if this happens, if in some cases they don't overshift and they stay in a minus, but they leave the guy in a 0, then one of the things that I think is really helpful is creating a wider split with your quick tackle. We play, if some of these clips that you'll watch, we play that quick tackle in a wider split than he normally would play. All right. And that is because we want to do what a lot of folks want to do. We want to create space. We want a smart split to create just a little bit more room. This is a 3-3 stack team that would have probably widened out to here. And had I had a little more experience doing this, I may have told them to keep widening until they keep going. Until they stop going, rather. All right. But one of the things you'll see out of Tavian here is just great eyes after his initial zone step to be able to get himself into position and seal where he knows the play is going to go. And as long as the kids know the large scheme is to punch the ball in the A to backside A gap, then they're able to get themselves into position like you see here that wouldn't normally, maybe you wouldn't normally think that the offensive lineman would keep tracking all the way in, but he knows that that cut's going to be up inside. And he knows that that cut's likely going to cut back if he doesn't, if we don't get to the linebackers that are on the backside. So here, our quick tackle is not only just zoning, but he's tracking to the inside shoulder of that linebacker so he can be in position for the running back to run underneath. I love that. And there again, you can see against some teams that have really, really good linebacking cores, you have to be able to adjust how we block with it. And in our pulling guard situation, his eyes are inside so that he can adjust. Here, he's actually thinking he may have to block the play side ID, but because Tavion's blocking, again, their best linebacker, and this kid was an absolute monster, just a tremendous linebacker, all-state linebacker, then our pulling guard he's able to adjust because his eyes are inside. So he can get his eyes from going to the play side ID and then turning back inside to find the backside ID. And there he is, getting his head around and getting his big body on the backside ID there. Do you work pulling guard? Go, okay, sorry. That was an old question. I'm looking at trying to stay up on the chat box. All right, I'm sorry with the low angle stuff. This is the best we can do at the high school level. We try to get the clear cameras. That's the best thing you can ask for, because you're not going to get the high angles. Those guys in here from Texas are probably frustrated with me. All right, another example here before we go on to some variants. All right, of just staying on track. So just a good clip, I thought, of showing the tracks and just staying on track and letting the defense scrape, stay over the top so we can cut back behind you. And the running backs' eyes are really, it's great to talk about, but it's really nothing new to teach or near as tough as teaching the initial eyes on same side power out of the gun, or in some of you who teach reading the backside D tackle on inside zone and making the bend on and cut off the backside D tackles. It's the exact same footwork. It's the exact same eyes for us. The only difference now is we add another gap because we're pulling a guy. So by adding that extra gap, I always try to tell the guys, once we get through our initial footwork in the backfield and we get into that mesh, when we accept the ball, we should expect the ball, and then our eyes should go right to the inside hip of the puller. So a lot of the track will be straight downhill towards his inside hip until we see some grass. And I've gotten some really great suggestions from some guys that are, heavy into option game in the gun, and some of their suggestions on how to shore up the mesh. We don't have a single difference in the way that we mesh when we hand the ball off on an automatic play, like what we call here is just an automatic handoff, or when we're actually reading the B gap. It's all the exact same thing for us. The mechanics of it are, I think, identical. As much as I can make them identical, they're identical. The note to make on the front here, that the reason I included this clip especially was because this gives you that kind of a clearer picture about how would I handle a single player on the plus with a really, really wide, like a jet front, and then a player in the backside A gap. So basically, what if I just wanted to solo the play side, or we got a solo call from the quick tackle? How would I handle the rest of that? And the answer is that the zone or the gap combo now gets bumped on a solo down to the center, and he makes the determination. So anytime we get a solo call from the quick tackle, it means the center can do whatever he wants to get to the backside ID, who's back here. And in this case, he's going to try to zone it. So he's actually going to post or he's actually going to drive this player, and the inside guard's going to post with his eyes back. So you can see that near flipper post, near foot, near flipper, and then there's that inside guard working back. And this is a 200-pound ex fullback that's playing in that spot. So kind of an indicator about like, what kind of body type do I need? Well, he's the worst guy you have. That's who you need. And he didn't have to do much. We're going to skip that clip because it's a little wide. All right, so how do we change things up? So we'll start talking about some variants. The first thing we'll talk about are basic backfield variants. I love to get bash or motion away and either read or not read. I love to action away from the scheme and let the quarterback run it when we have a quarterback that can run. The first thing that I would do if I was going to install it is I would get some sort of variant where we mesh with the tailback and we let that tailback work backside, whether we're going to fake it laterally like an outside mesh like a bash, or whether we're just going to fake it. In this case, we're going to let him action away and then fill or block somebody in the backside D or C gap, and then let the quarterback be the scheme. Let him run the ball to the play side. The reason I like that so much, I think for me, is because it's the fastest, easiest thing to put in. All right, we're already doing it when we run our option game. All right, for me, it is just the easiest thing to incorporate from the rest of our offense. It's a day one install in the rest of our offense, an automatic run. For a defense, they're still going to be reading who they're reading. They're still going to key, sniffer. They're still going to key guard if that's what their deal is. So you still got to block it up. It's not a fix all, but it's definitely something that has made a difference to us. All right. And especially when we've been in a tough spot, this is an overtime play, a double overtime play here. So an example of kind of how strongly I feel about that scheme and how successful that it can be for you as a changeup, as a very simple counter without having to change anything for the offensive line. When you're in double overtime and you need a hard 5 yards and you can create a gap like that, a space in the sever in the defense like that, just from a little misdirection. This is the first overtime play. So to show you how inventive I am as a play caller, I called the same play in the first overtime and in the second overtime. It's not very inventive. I think that's probably the answer to that question, but 2 touchdowns, so we'll take it. The option game off of it would be the next place that I would go. So after I use the quarterback as whether it's a direct snap and a downhill play, the next thing I would do is go to the RPO game. All right. And some of the answers we have to protect this run scheme in the RPO game are just our most simple, easiest to read quick game concepts, or our isolation routes series, which we call X games. That's the world that we stay in when we work the RPO, because I want to be able to practice everything in multiple settings. And it's really hard when you only have about 5 minutes, 10 minutes of individual period during a game week with your quarterbacks. You got to be able to, for me, I was calling offense and defense this year. So I had to be able to have them practice something really important with me. And then when you have your own indie, when I'm not there, you got to know what to practice. You got to know what drills will work. And this is a perfect drill that they can work together if you have 2 to 3 quarterbacks. All right. Just working space. All right. And feeling a movement key. We don't actually read anything. We just kind of work a progression in the RPO. It's just the same that we do in a normal scheme, but we do feel how space gets taken by movement key defenders. So they can practice that. They can practice being in the mesh, especially if you were to have 4 guys. But for me, it's usually a coach and then 3 quarterbacks in a rotation. One guy is working the defender than conflict. One guy's the mesh and one guy's the quarterback getting and ripping a couple throws off. And I just move from the different routes. So our first and the one route combo that I love the most on top of this or attached to this to protect it is this one, smash fade, and a hitch to a speed in. We speed in if we don't get the ball. So we try to stay on the move if we don't get the ball. But the backside glance is something everybody in America has been running for now like 8 years, and I think I've finally figured out how to be reasonably successful into it. We had a lot more success with it this year than we had in years past, and so I think we figured out how to make it work for us. All right, when we condense sets, a lot of what we try to run out of that are stick combinations. All right, and I like to do it with motion. You saw in the clip before that we work a lot of orbit. Orbit's a big part of our game in pass game, but then also is a big part in the run game. Just very easy to out leverage guys. It's a throw we can make, and we throw bubble and key screen quite a bit. So it's in the same family. It's just how do I change the look pre-snap and motion somebody else out. All right, and there's our free access throws that we're going to talk about on the two-man side. It's usually a bubble or a key, or what some people call a now screen. All right, and on the single receiver side, it's usually a nonverbal, just depending on how advanced the quarterback is. This year a quarterback could change some of those single receiver routes based on the leverage of the corner. What we don't do is fake snap, check the sideline, and then I change it. I haven't done that because to me it slows us down, and I'm never quite sure what I'm hearing from up top. So I think if I had a better system for having somebody communicate with me up top what kind of leverage we were getting, then I would feel more comfortable in making the right route check. But right now it's based on what I see and what I think is good. And the last would be it would work in the family of the orbit. We'll actually bounce the back out of the backfield and let the quarterback run the ball. I think it's so easy. I think it's so fast, and in some cases, it's allowed us to get the ball on the perimeter to one of our best players. In other cases, it's caused major displacement in the secondary, like huge displacement. Like there might be 4 guys going with that motion, and it just made better angles for us to run power, which is what everybody wants. It's in the room, I'm pretty sure. All right, so we start with the speed in, and I'll race through this, and because I want you to have time to ask questions. We start with the hitch to speed in.
Go ahead and take your time. Like I said, just take your time with it. Like I said, we're
okay.
Good. Take your time.
The entire premise behind attaching quick game to this run scheme is really to be able to take advantage of, grass that's created when a forced defender plays super hard, or a D-gap run fitter that might be in the secondary at like 7-8 yards if there's no forced defender there that's fitting now. How can we exploit grass that they've opened up there? And when we go back to the philosophy and show you, the whole run game is like, how do I force you into one high? And then once you get into one high, how do I throw the ball against it? That's it. And it's a juxtaposition back and forth with, can I use RPOs to just as an advantage to keep you off of what we want to do anyway, which is just run the ball. So when we teach the quarterbacks how to identify, the most likely available throw, what we do is we really work off of when they're in JVs, where is the play going? Where's the attack point? And where's the nearest force defender? Because he's going to set the point for us of our coverage triangle. In this case, the nearest force defender is here because the play is supposed to go here. So off of him, he's basically gonna set the coverage triangle for us. And this is not a novel idea for a lot of you guys who probably are like me and steal things from people. I think that there are some systems out there that do an absolutely exceptional job of teaching this, and probably a much better job than I do. And I'd love to learn from them. But when we find the point of the triangle, we don't really go a lot farther off of that. We just look to see, all right, what's the leverage of the corner? What's the leverage of the nearest safety? If they're really low, then we're in the man world. And if he's got man eyes, we're in the man world. So to the quarterback, we talk about find the point of the triangle. We talk about how flat is that triangle? That's flat, triangle's flat, then we're in the man. It's gonna be man. So your man eyes and they're flat, you're gonna get challenged, and you may have to throw this slot fade. And that's for us, you're gonna see a couple cut-ups of us throwing slot fade because you're getting defenses in one high looks. This year we got quite a bit of, which was kind of interesting. We got quite a bit of man, and it was really loose man. And I think maybe more than anything, it had to do with the shorter off season. It's hard to teach coverage. All right. But once he reads that he wants to throw, or he wants to actually read it, to throw it, he will mesh. And now it's a true post snap RPO. If we're in a situation where it is definitely going to be a throw, I'll show you a cut up here in a second. He doesn't even mesh. He just gets the ball and maybe gets into his quick game footwork, which for us is a rocker, and then he throws or he resets his feet. So he doesn't drop when we're throwing quick game. In this case, he's going to post snap read it, and he'd be reading a shot play, or we'll show you a couple of different route combinations. In this case, it's the slot fade, the shot down to the hot. All right. And the hot's always a quick throw, a throw I can make off of that rocker step if I've got really good leverage. All right. And so when we read in the coverage triangle here, he's identifying soft, right? Safety in the middle of the field, and he's got a force defender that's way outside the box. So he can really read the shot right now off the line of scrimmage. He can really take a good long look at that and mesh all the way through it. And then if he feels like he's got tons of grass, all he does is disengage and rip the ball out there to the hitch, and there's nobody covering it. Now, when I learned the basic hitch concept, I learned that the slot player is supposed to rub the outside shoulder of the force defender, right? And so in a lot of the development of this, I did it running out of, this formation, but then also ran the regular hitch concept with the slot fade out of empty or out of 3-by. Well, I got really sick of not ever throwing the slot fade because sometimes it's really open, and all we needed to do was inside release this guy and then fade him back out to get him loose so he didn't get rerouted. So some of you guys are like, man, he's got to rub the outside shoulder. Well, I would rather throw the slot fade if we got it. If I call an RPO with something vertical, I want to take a chance on it. I want to rip it if it's there. I don't want to leave it on the field if we can get a shot at it. And you're going to see in this game a little bit later, this is early in the game. This is only the 6th play of the game, but a little bit later, we're going to rip one of those slot fades. He could have had that one, and it took us, after we got to the sideline, we had a big play here. This is a great play. We get the ball out to the hitch. He makes a nice move, and we get a big gain. But later on, he's going to see that slot fade come open, and we're going to hit it. All right. The hitch can be, for us, it can be something that is anywhere between 4 to 7 yards, just depending on what we perceive to be the cushion, space cushion that we got from the corner. I don't want the guys, and you can see this is Caleb from this year. This is from this fall. I do not want the guys to shorten their route. I want the guys to allow the route to develop, because if they're open too quick, we need to have a chance to get all the way through the mesh. We have a chance in a lot of cases to bait defensive backs out. And one way we can do that is if we get all the way from the back hip to the front hip with a shuffle in our mesh with our quarterback. So that's a critical point, is don't allow those guys to be too early. I'll go to the sideline and come back to the end zone for this one as well. This is a example of that man alignment. So here we can't find a force defender because the sucker's on the line of scrimmage and man on the line of scrimmage. So our coverage triangle is really, really short right now. All right. So for him, he's going to identify that he's got to have to get the ball out quickly, and it's very likely that he's going to get hit if he holds it. So I love getting into a situation where the quarterback's savvy enough to know I can throw one of those two. I'm actually just going to abort the run and just let that guy cross my face, step through and read the shot to hot really quick. Because if you can hang in there, you got not only 6, but you have 7 in protection because the running back will seal for you, and you'll have time to get the throw off, which is the best matchup in that play. All right. And get yourself some hard yards. All right, he's kind of another one of those pre-snap. He already knows situations, just because of they're so open out there, and he's thinking to himself, "There's just absolutely no way, unless somebody really flew out of the box at the last minute and they dropped one of the defensive ends or something. There's just no way they're going to be able to cover the hitch to speed in." That he'll detach and throw that thing. All right. Now, when we work to the short side, I like to run the glance as a base and then let the quarterback check to a hitch or speed out, maybe even a now if he gets soft or if he gets inside leverage. For me, people are consistently having to spend a lot more energy trying to fit that D gap, or if they've got a 5+ box, like a 3-4 team, trying to figure out how they're going to fit one of the 2 B gaps if they're playing an overhang out wide, that they consistently match up man on the backside. And for the teams that for us and in my studies and what we've done, if we were going to play 2 safeties and we were going to try to key where he went and rat him to get the extra hat in there, what ends up happening is, just because of the way it's formatted, we can get the invert defender where we want him, and then we can still attack the single one-on-one, because it turns into one-on-one, even though pre-snap it probably looks like too high. So for me, the hard part's been to be able to find answers. Can we throw back shoulder? Can I throw a comeback? Can I throw speed out? Can I throw really, really quick now screen? Because everybody's trying to stay on top of glance. In the college level, I've seen that they've just done a much, much better job of preparing for it and of defending it. It still hasn't made it quite down to high school yet, where guys are able to teach those secondary players to see through to the RPO and be on top of it to take it away. So we'll have some more glances in there, but I wanted to show you the slot fade. When we install this, what I give the slot guy freedom to do is use the field. If their force defender is going to go with you, I love to just draw him out. Now we're not like the Briles system, and I don't know all that magic, because those guys won't talk to you. They won't teach you anything. That's like one of the guys, you're part of the club you're in. If you're not, then you can't learn it. Like, they won't teach it. But we will try to spread the field as far as we can to the twins in our key screens, our bubbles, and our nows. And then also when we run this slot fade combo, because we really want to attack the field somewhere in that area when we run that. We want the ball, if possible, to be caught at the top of the numbers. That's optimal because it's away from the middle safety. All right, so in this situation, this is a little bit later in the game from that clip that we showed earlier. Quarterback knows pre-snap that he's got a shot possibility, but he's going to go through his mesh. Right, the safety has eyes inside. Instead of playing the cover 3 and actually working over towards the field side hash, he stays inside, open cheapy, which I think is just awesome, kind of awesome indicator for if you work the progression right, that you can find ways to win later in games, even if early in the game you didn't get the look that you want, or you didn't get the quarterback didn't see what you saw. If you have that communication system, like, hey, did we work our shot first? And he's like, no, I just kind of threw the hot. This is another example of that. Right now the corners at off leverage, which I tell our quarterbacks that off typically means he's going to turn and open and find his divider, and he's going to try to midpoint these 2 routes and squeeze them. And usually that comes with a force defender that's a little bit wider. In this case, the force defender's in tight. So every indicator to the quarterback is telling him he's going to have to throw the ball here. And this is a situation where, like I told you earlier, he may just abort the mesh. And you're going to watch our quarterback's eyes in a second, but he's just token faking right now. He has no intention to mesh at all. His thought is reading shot to hot, and he could have taken the hot for sure. You know, if it had been a little bit younger guy, you know, you'll watch the end zone to see his eyes a little bit better. If it had been a younger guy, he may have just stopped and just ripped the hot really quick off quick game footwork. But if you can get him to be comfortable and just sit there for a second, just show and then rocker and fit that ball where he knows it's away from the safety, then the wide receiver will take care of the corner. He'll keep the corner on his back. So, and you could see pre-snap as he's looking. This is what I like to look at. You could kind of see him identifying. Here he's identifying the triangle. He's taking a look at his leverage. And as he's clapping, one of the things he's saying out of the corner of his mouth, we've got a couple of code words, but one of the things he's saying is looky. And so when he says looky, the running back is going to token fake, but you can tell he's not going after the ball. He knows that there's going to be a throw. So the object for the running back is to keep his hands low and keep his head away from the quarterback so he doesn't hit the ball, because we're going to throw it. That's looky is the term we use. Sometimes we use the word tug to throw to an uncovered guy, because that's our terminology for TUG, throw uncovered guy. Yeah. So a lot of what the reaction is, or what the adjustment is defensively, you can see, is to get into a one high, get an extra hat in the box. What happens when we get a quarters look, or we get a safety over the top, or we perceive, in this case, a bad guess, but we perceive there's going to be a safety over the top? The glance post, or the bending glance, is a really great option to use as well. I love this route. I love to bend that thing and give them the freedom to get around maybe an invert defender. Sometimes you guess wrong. In this case, I thought they were going to be in a quarters look with the safety over the top, and he was playing in the middle of the field. So in our normal pass game, I don't make the kids run lines anyway. So it kind of was, I don't know, it was kind of helpful to be able to have that, because if there was nobody in front of him, in some cases, he just ran straight forward. But this is supposed to be a bending route that comes in this open area behind the hard robber. And that's what you see what we've got going on here. Depending on what terminology you use, you know, this guy is going to be our D-gap run fitter right here. We're going to try to bend around him into that open void and throw it in there. In this case, you know, he's just nowhere to be found, and there's no safety over the top. So it's really just kind of keeping the ball straight, keeping the route straight for where the ball can get into open grass is one of the coaching points that can be made very early on, where you're just repping that in practice. This is another example of that. It's a slot glance from this year, all right, out of a twins formation. Once we get past the first level, his eyes should be really just trying to see how much room he's got before he has to make that left foot break, all right, to get into the open space. And he's going to try to protect the ball from the safety, and the quarterback's going to try to protect the glance receiver from a secondary defender. And that we don't have one here. You can see they're playing a heavy box, and our backside safety is screwed down in a fold run fit, or like a cutback run fit. So it's pretty much that Dom, our slot receiver here, has a lot of room to work with. All right, the great throw and catch in an open space there. We get a good shot of our quarterback's eyes and the mesh in the backfield. All right, and one of the things I will tell you that Isaiah, our quarterback this year, did an excellent job of is he would just not preview the coverage triangle, but he would take a picture of it, have a mental picture, and he'd be ripping that ball. He'd be ripping that ball really, really late. I mean, he would hang in there knowing that he could get just another couple of yards of space or a couple of steps away from the defender if he just held that mesh for a little bit longer. and we were able to get a lot of really big gains on that glance post, on the slot post, on the slot fade, things like that, deep routes, shot routes, because he had the patience to be able to ride all the way from his back hip to his front hip plus a shuffle. All right, these ones are few and far between. The ones where you just get a really great. I'm going slow because I don't want it to be shaken and too jittery on your video. But these ones don't happen that often. You don't get too many of these. And most of the routes that we do complete and have to throw, they got to be fit into pretty tight windows. It's not always that easy. This one's just a kind of a good way to, I don't know, maybe a good way to change up what you do out of your normal 5-man surface. But we use the glance and the choice family of routes. So what we call X games, out of any time we have 2 splits. And for me, I think that was one of the most, I don't know, one of the most simple, but one of the most effective ways of just bolstering our run game this year, was being able to attack those 1-high matchups when we knew we were going to get defenders coming down to fit D gap, and we were going to have some sort of freedom to be able to run something one-on-one outside. We did not have the fastest receivers, but we had kids that were really work hard, and we had kids that were reasonably intelligent and had good hands. So they were able to get their bodies in position a lot of times that if we put the ball somewhere on target, we could kind of box people out. And even in crappy weather, this is 28 degrees and it's sleet, snow, our first game, February 26th, we're still throwing it. And we threw 2 touchdowns on glance posts, just being able to identify, okay, we're going to run power here. We know that we're going to attack the nearest force defender, and this guy, the triangle is really, I mean, it's there's only 2 guys, everybody else on the line of scrimmage. So we were going to have to rip this thing. Really, I like the use of some of what I've seen from our college counterparts in adjusting splits and working corners, working bang corners, where we show that we're going to block inside and then we work out to a short corner. I think those are awesome schemes that I can't wait to kind of mess around with. And we did use that a couple times this year, but we made a lot of money on this. So, and with the short year, with a very, 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 very short preseason, we had a lot of schemes to put in, and not a lot of time. So as I keep cycling through these, I have some option clips, but I think now is a good time, since I went at least 45 minutes already. I think it's a good time to open up in case somebody has questions. I can go back through and then maybe hit some things that I was a little bit slow on, or maybe I didn't talk about at all that you're interested in finding out about.
Yeah, coaches, don't hesitate to ask questions at this point. Like I said, we'll probably go about another 5 or 10 minutes. So if you got any questions, I mean, obviously we'll sit here and answer questions as long as you got them, but probably about 9:25-ish, we'll cut it off. I think it's probably about 30 different coaches in here. I think at one point we had about 22 all at once. So, and I know a couple people come in late. Like I said, the recording will be on YouTube at some point in the next 24 or 48 hours. So please do not hesitate whether to put in the chat or to unmute yourself to ask Coach questions. Obviously, if you unmute yourself and ask a question, please remute yourself once you're done. Thank you.
What's your thought process on going 12 personnel, seeing a few formations with it? I love it. I think especially, and I'll get you to a screen where I can draw just a little bit for you. I think when we're in an unbalanced set like this, for me, we love to be in 12 this year because that was our personnel. We were pretty good. We had two pretty good, H/tight end guys. If you can get an extra blocker in here, it just adds voltage to the play. Whether you're running the basic short power, or whether you're going to use him as a cruise and a second arc blocker, and you're going to read like this inside mesh read that's on the screen here. Boy, it is tough as all get out for me to fit it gap wise as a defensive coach, because I want to make sure we've got the long side fit up. And if you happen to have, guys on each side, you really forces you into a one high, right? And then you see all those clips that we just showed about going after one high with glance posts or speed outs or hitches, comebacks. If you're better than we are on the outside and the edge at corner, then you can pretty much get away with whatever you want, But if we have a decent matchup out there, or if we are able to motion and get some sort of swing action out of the backfield to make somebody move from the box, then we can re-equate the numbers. And that's what it's all about. It's just about trying to re-equate the numbers. Yep. Seen a bunch of 12 in there. We were very heavy in 12 personnel this year. Great question. What else?
Hey, Coach, I had a question about maybe an ID tag question. There was a clip where you were facing a defense with all red jerseys, and they had a 7-man box. It was kind of a 3-3 stack, shifted to the long side, and there was the force player was looking like a box defender. You had your quick tackle go to the zero Mike in the 3-3 stack. Your double team went to the backside. It was during the RPO session.
Okay.
And you left the force player who was tight to the box unblocked.
This team?
No, it was all red.
Maroon or this kind of red?
It was jersey number 5 that was the force player in the end zone copy.
Okay.
Yeah, here we go. So your short side tackle there climbs the 12. Basically, the scheme works, but 5 is left unblocked. How do you identify that 5 is a non-blockable player in this front?
That's a great question. What we would do is, because of the way that the front is set with what we call 2 to this side and a minus, so we call this guy -1 to the backside. We would want now the center or the snapper and the inside guard to be the guys who are working combo to the backside ID, and then we would want to rip through to 12 with a quick tackle. We would want to handle 5 as the play side ID with our puller. So, I mean, if I was drawing it up, that's how we would want it to work, because this is actually a 4-3 that's overshifted. So they've identified a new center. They've identified their centers here. They're playing a 2-eye, what normally be a 2-eye if this was the left guard. We give this guy the freedom to call what he wants to call. So in this case, I don't know what he called, but because I know this opponent really, really well, and I have a ton of respect for this defensive coordinator, he was supposed to be ripping through and playing the mic, but it's the third play of the game. It's probably our first offensive play, as I recall. It might have been the first or second. It's 1st and 10, so I think it's the first offensive play of the game. This game, so he probably is just working off of adrenaline and instinct, which just says, I got to zone down. You can see him touching the snapper, He's probably thinking, I'm going to stay on track. I'm going to find that Mike linebacker. Well, he went over the top. And so we end up with the situation where the puller blocks the Mike on the scrape. And we would hope, if there was a handoff, that the running back would chase the inside hip of that puller. And so even if this player here 5, which is like a Sam linebacker in a pro 4-3, even if that player 5 was in position unblocked, he'd be outside of the puller on the kick out, and we'd make a cut in the A gap. But you're right. I mean, we clearly bypass that guy and just keep staying on track all the way. And it looks a little bit too man type for my liking. We don't have to block it that way. We can gap hinge to that guy. We can combo this. And we do later on the game. I mean, that was the clip that one of the first clips we showed was just a little bit later in the game against this team.
Gotcha. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Critical though that the skip puller have his eyes inside, because if he does, then what happens is, even in a situation where they're on top of the play, and they're reading great. If his eyes are inside, he will find the scraping linebacker. And if his shoulders are square on the skip pull, he can get on that inside hip and get that guy kicked out, so that we don't have that situation happen. So the back can still make a cut, still make yardage. I love it. Anybody else? I'm sure there's probably a lot. Go ahead, buddy.
We're looking at a lot of short power where that up back, he's aligned to the strength. A couple clips, he wasn't aligned to the strength. He was aligned to the single line side. So I've never run it. How much difference do you see from a defensive alignment just by moving the up back, if any? And I know you've shown a lot of like twins open. So, like how many teams do you see, if you put that up back to the twin side, do they treat that like more like trips? I'm more curious about how defenses have shown how to defend it from a number set.
Yeah, great question. The best guys, the best defenses that I've seen will identify that guy as a trips player if he is to the trip side. And in cases like this, where we go long side to an X over, and we've got the H to the short side, typically they just treat that like trips nub, and they play a bland version of their defense. And I think some of that is also because of the amount of formations we run, period. When I break us down every offseason, I try to get an idea of how I would play it. And so just to give you a quick screenshot formationally, so we can talk through what I think is the best answer for your question. In a case where we put the tight end over to the trip side, I would play it with 2 safeties at 8 yards as our fill players, and I would play with 2 overhangs to force, and then I would leave some variation of the tight front inside with a 0 and 2 3s, or a 0 and 2 4-eyes, and I would really dare me to try to run the ball long over and over and over again, just to make sure we could match that adjustable player, because and I'm giving away all the trade secrets, that guy is so integral in this offense. So if he was in like a split action, and he was going back the opposite C gap, and we were going to zone to the left, and we're going to hand that ball off on a split zone, then I would want a run fitter to be able to fit the B to C gap here with a force player outside, so that I could play behind the zone with my Mike and my other safety, or my other overhang. So if in this case, if he was here, I would want to play some sort of rat coverage where if he was working strong side power, I would have an outside player who could fit quickly. I would have a B gap that was closed, so the ball would have to bounce. And I would have this second run fitter fitting now right to his side where he's going, so that we could play behind the play on the opposite side. And the only reason I say that is because the more that you can spill this thing laterally, the better chance I think you have of being able to run it down or making the offense go to something peripheral. When I played against it this spring, I played almost exclusively 3 down and said, okay, like offense, because I let our quarterbacks call it when I was calling the defense. Run the ball there over and over and over again. Try to run the ball. Just don't do this. Don't run out here because it's tough. It's tough fit because it's short side. So it's very easy to get outside in this area if you don't have defenders there to box it up quickly. The other thing I would say is that and I would suggest people use this whenever possible, if we can create a comfort level where the center can snap the ball off hip to the long side and you can run your speed options or your sprint outs or whatever to the long sides. I think that's a skill that is just completely underutilized, and certainly something that I want to get better at teaching, because sprint out is so great out of this set. So is speed option. They're so great. The short side, it gets the ball to the perimeter so quickly. And even if you just ran it with the power scheme that we were already talking, that short power, and left this player unblocked, using this guy as a cruiser and pitching the ball now gets the ball right now to the perimeter, right outside on the edge. And it's really hard, it's really hard to fit it if it's a funky formation that they're not used to seeing. They've typically got to play pretty bland.
The kind of piggyback off the backfield, have you run short power with the sidecar back away from the short side? And if so, do you have tips on footwork for the tee?
Yeah. We use the exact same footwork whenever we're running power or counter to the opposite side of the formation. And then those all match up. And so, and this is same side, or if in this case, we've been watching a bunch of same side, but we don't have to. The same side footwork is the same as our tight zone footwork. It's the same as our same side counter and power footwork, where it's a J path that we draw for the kids literally on the grass. We'll literally draw and paint the quarterback's feet, and we'll draw 3 different paths so that they can literally step from their position, 6-inch step to the quarterback, back foot gets into the sprinting position, so stagger. So 6-inch stagger, and then eyes to the mesh, eyes to the read. So in this case, it's eyes to the handoff, and then it's eyes to the puller. So when we're same side, he really has to slow himself down to make sure he can get in behind everybody. Anytime that we cross his face, or we work opposite side, power, counter, maybe it's wide zone, then the footwork is really just 6-inch to the mesh, eyes to the mesh, eyes to the read. We don't make him actually jog his feet to get into a sprinter stance. And that's because we just want him to run across the quarterback's face and wherever he sets the mesh. Because we let the quarterback change the mesh point sometimes when we know that we've got a handoff coming. And I mean that by what I mean by that is the quarterback can read bubbles in the defense just like the line can. And he knows if we're going to run, like later on in this series, we're going to run wide zone and we're going to attack that gap. He knows he wants to get away from this guy in the backside B gap so he can hand the ball off. So we're going to let him actually move the mesh point over here. So the running back's really got to chase him to get there. And we don't want the same footwork over and over and over again to be robotic, to create a robot, because sometimes the mesh point changes. So we 6-inch step, we identify the mesh point, try to get our eyes to the mesh point. Then once we get we get our belly on the mesh, we get our eyes to wherever the read is. So so that we can make a play. I think I got a cut up of that here. Yeah, I think I got a cut up of that here. One of these. Yeah, this is it. So this is just a little bit later on the drive, where we are hurry up by mentality. And so a lot of what we do ends up being successful just because of the fact that we're able to line up and run fast. But you can see here, the quarterback knows he's got numbers because I just checked to it as fast as I could. So he actually changes the mesh point on his own, and he's allowed to do that. He shuffles to try to get the mesh point another 1.5 yards away from this unblocked B gap defender on the backside of our wide zone scheme, because he knows we've got to hand it off. We got numbers. But I didn't change any of my footwork that I was already teaching in our inside zone, same side power, outside zone, opposite side power schemes that we were, when we started doing this more and more in 2017, I kept everything the same because I was too busy trying to figure out how I wanted to block it.
That's awesome. Thanks.
It's a great question. There's a lot of different schools of thought. There's some great coaches out there that can probably teach mesh footwork and option footwork much better than I do right now. But one of the things I really think we've done a pretty good job at is becoming really consistent in how the kids feel the mesh so that we can read people on the first level. We've done a reasonable job of optioning first level defenders for a lot of years in this offense. And we just only really in the last 4 or 5 years gotten really good at reading second and third level defenders in the RPO game.
Do we have any questions for Coach before we start wrapping it up?
You guys can feel free to reach out to me. I am absolutely happy to share stuff with you. And I would, like I said before, I really love it if somebody's trying this stuff or has some good ideas. I'd really love some interaction. Anything that I can do to help us get better, especially practical stuff like, hey, you should drill it like this, or hey, here's a thought for a scheme that might fit into that world that you're living in, because we're going to need all the help we can get. You can find us now at Prince George County High School. We're going to be moving to Prince George County, and we're going to have an exciting new opportunity there. Great. We've got a great staff put together. Coach Urquhart's on here right now. He'll be our defensive coordinator, and he's better than I am. So I can't wait to get on the board with him every day. And I know he's going to make me a hell of a lot better than I already am, because he's in the same building. Just keep an eye out for us. You just never know what kind of crazy stuff we're going to do next. Kind of crazy stuff on offense you might see.
All right. Well, coaches, like I said, his contact information is up on the screen. If you want to catch any of this, this will be up Thursday or Friday, one of the two. I'm not going to sit here and guarantee a date or a time, just because, like I said, you never know what happens. And like I said, it's a hectic time of year. I'm in the middle of moving / senior grades are due tomorrow. So it's going to be interesting. Like I said, his contact information is there. Please reach out to him. He also has a podcast dropping with me probably sometime in the fall. I'm not going to sit here and guarantee a date on that, because as I was telling him before we came on, I have 8,000 videos to edit here as well. But again, appreciate everybody coming on. Like I said, give Coach a follow, reach out to him. Coach usually gets back pretty dang quickly. Like I said, he got back to me super quickly when we started scheduling things, both back when I did the podcast and for this. Like I said, I want to thank Coach again. And I think he's also, you correct me if I'm wrong, Coach. You have a also video on CoachTube as well, correct?
Yeah, I just put that in the chat in case anybody wants to see the long side power, the tight zone or split zone, or wants to see the wide zone stuff, the sprint out pass stuff. That's all some of the drop back game. That stuff's in the CoachTube thing, and yeah, I'm not plugging it to get paid. So I'll give you cut ups if you want to.
Well,
So,
it's there,
but
for
it's good.
you.
It's I think it's a better way to learn it than just sending the film and good luck.
Yeah.
You know.
So, like I said, coaches, please reach out to him. I appreciate Coach for doing this.